welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my very great delight to be joined by the fabulous Bruce Randall. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate being here.
I really appreciate you being here too, and I'm so looking forward to our conversation. And should just point out before I go any further, we're actually not related, albeit we do have the same surname. So this was one of our first interactions. But let me tell you a bit more about Bruce before we get started. So Bruce brings over 3 decades of extensive experience in business development across various sectors, including software consulting, cloud computing, AI, applications, digital advertising, manufacturing, and international markets. With a proven track record of driving strategic initiatives in business technology markets, Bruce's expertise lies in making critical strategic decisions, executing growth plans, and fostering business expansion. Currently, Bruce collaborates with companies to provide AI understanding from a thought leader position and serves on the advisory boards of Kimberlite Token and is president of the Pocasset Glen Condo Association. In these capacities, he actively works to enhance shareholder value and really start to drive those organizations. But I mean, what a journey, Bruce. I mean, 3 decades and such a variety of kind of areas and organizations. Could you bring that to life for us a little bit more, please?
Sure. The 3 decades, I say that it took me a decade to just start to figure it out. And then the other 2 decades, I started meditating and I became a Reiki master. And then from then on, I improved to where I am today. So it's been quite an interesting journey by going inside and creating the results outside.
I love that. I think we do often have to go on that journey into ourselves before we can go on the journey to become ourselves. Don't we? We have to find it first to then live it. But it took me longer than 10 years to work that out, I'll be honest. I was a bit of a slow learner. Because I kept looking for all these external things that were going to make the difference. And until I'd done the journey inward and made that connection, I was just a lifelong learner that wasn't putting anything into practice. Have you found that having gone in and done that, and obviously becoming a Reiki master in that as well, taking it to that next level, that you're now much more in alignment and therefore things become easier?
I am in alignment because I figured out that, we have things that we believe about ourselves that we've been taught at a young age. I call them belief codes. And when we get older, we start to say, why do I continue to repeat these patterns? And then if you look into it, you find there are teachings from a young age that come through. And understanding that, you can reprogram what your belief codes are to be what you want versus what was taught at a young age. And we have the ability to do that. And when we do that, we understand that we can create our future and that we have to believe in ourselves. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you won't do a thing. You have to have that behind you. And then when you look at the goals you want and you work for those goals, you can create the behaviors that will get you there. And if you believe them, you've done that. And I've proven that over the years.
It's so true. I often think the most important thing is belief. As what we believe to be true becomes true. So if we believe we can't, we can't. And if we believe we can, we can. But we've got to work on that belief piece first, haven't we? So that we can go, is this belief serving me? Is it actually doing what I'd like it to do, or is it just going to drive me to do what I don't want it to do? And that takes conscious effort, doesn't it, to be intentional with that belief and then changing it if it's not working.
Yeah, and I've had a couple experiences that have proven that to me, and the most recent one in 2020 is one that has created a path that is better than I could have ever imagined, and it's just because I put it in place. I believed I could do it with the decades of experience, and then it just unfolded better than I could ever believe, and that has created the intent to propagate love and to propagate a win-win. And that has served me very well in the business community. So if you improve yourself, comes through in every area.
I love that. It is so true. And I think looking at that, I always look at, how do I leave people better than I found them? I often will say to people, my best leadership advice came from when I was hairdressing, when they taught you how to listen, to understand what the person really wants, to help them to try and achieve it, and to have them leave you feeling the best version of themselves.
Right.
And I kind of carried that into the rest of my life and the rest of my business life, which is, if I can leave people feeling better as a result of the interaction, then I'm doing a good job. Then I'm doing something positive, and that and once you do that, actually, it has that ripple, doesn't it? It has that ripple into all of the areas, and in particularly in the business world. I think, sadly, for a period, it didn't have that kind of culture or ethos. Very much it would be a what's in it for me kind of piece, and
Right.
therefore the expectation is that everybody you come across is going to be thinking about what's in it for them, instead of actually, how do we co-create, how do we collaborate, how do we add value to each other. And that's why I think it's such a welcome approach when people do approach it in that way, because you're like, oh, how lovely.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy this interaction instead of it's going to feel like hard work. And I think, as things have evolved and moved on, and particularly with the vast advances and changes that we've had in technology and what it can do for us, I think it's made our interpersonal interactions even more important. Would you agree? And obviously, you know so much more about this area than I do.
I do. In fact, AI is one of those areas that has really enabled people and enabled businesses to make better decisions based on what AI can do, because AI is an enabler. It will give you information to help you make better decisions, and AI will put information in front of you for trends that you may not have noticed yet. But AI, because of its intricacies, can say, hey, this might be happening now. And that allows better decisions and people to be better informed. And it's something that's, a lot of people are afraid of it a little bit, mostly because they don't understand it. There's been a lot of hype around it. But when you get right down to it, AI is something that can help people once they understand what it can do for them.
Yeah, I think it is often, it's our fear of the unknown that
Right.
is the thing that holds us back, isn't it? It's we don't if we don't understand something, and we come at it from a position of fear, then we're never going to look to learn about it. And I guess for me, I personally think it's one of my greatest traits, but for other people, it might be one of the biggest frustrations is, I'm passionately curious. So I want to learn more. I want to know more. I want to understand the things I don't understand. I certainly didn't learn from that curiosity kills the cat that my parents told me about. I'm still going to be curious, because for me, that's that they're the bits that are intriguing. But that does mean sometimes facing the things where we have to go, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't understand it, but I'm going to learn about it, and I'm going to see how can it help me? How can it allow me to have an even better, even broader impact? But I guess for a lot of people, AI is one of those areas where they are slightly afraid of it because they don't know what it is, and that fear of what does it mean for them, and how do they how do they implement that into their organization? So what advice would you give for people when they're considering AI right now?
Well, I would advise people to change your perspective on it instead of fear, because it's just software, right?
Yeah.
To have that passion and interest in it, and you're going to get further that way instead of fear based. But I tell people that the world is changing, and I took a course on AI and machine learning and building data science solutions. And I got a lot out of that because I understood what it could do. And if you take a course to enable yourself to understand what AI is and how you can better work with it, you're going to be one of the people that adds value later on, and you're going to feel good about that because you understand versus coming at it from a fear base. And with all the hype that's been around AI, it's hard to really understand what it is until you dig down and get the facts on it. And I mean, I've never been afraid of software. I'm not the best. I mean, I don't write software, but I understand it and I can explain it to anybody. And that's really the gift that I have, where I can get people to understand brain computer interface. I can get people to understand the back end of AI, the probabilities. And it's that understanding that's going to enable everybody in the future to propagate with AI instead of being afraid of it.
I love that. I think you're right. I think learning about the things that scare us is a positive thing, because I often liken it to children's nightmares, and they think there's a monster under the bed, and actually when you go and look, it's not. It's a discarded toy or something else. But you've got to go and look at it. You've got to go and understand it, haven't you? And go, okay, let's I guess feel the fear and do it anyway. Go and address that thing and go, well, okay, it might scare me, it might make me nervous, but I'm gonna go and learn more so that I can make a more informed choice on should I still be scared of this, or actually now I understand it better, is it something that isn't to be feared but to be embraced, and that it can actually I think with all things, we sometimes are nervous of change. It's kind of like anything that's going to involve a change, we know is going to be uncomfortable, because change is uncomfortable. I've likened it to, if I get people to say, right, cross your arms for me, and now unfold them and fold them again the other way. And some people can do it, and some people are like, I've got to really think about it, even though it's like, it's just folding my arms.
Sure.
And that's because we've got a way we naturally do it. We've got a way that feels comfortable to us. And when you ask people afterwards, how did it feel? Uncomfortable. I had to really think about it. I didn't know what I was doing. I had to really, and I was like, okay, that's just what change feels like. But you did it. You survived it. You come out the other side. You can get there. We've just got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable moments, haven't we? With the fact that, yes, it'll be uncomfortable while I don't know, but when I learn, then I will know, and then I'll come out the other side, and I will be confident and comfortable that I understand it to the level that I need to. Because again, we don't all need to suddenly go and be able to code these things and work out how we design them. It's more how do we incorporate them into our everyday, and how do we understand the art of the possible. I guess is for me one of the things that I've always tried to consider when I'm thinking about the things that are new. But when you're working with organizations and they're thinking about kind of these things, and particularly obviously you're doing this advisory at board level as well, what are the number one questions that you find come up for organizations when they're thinking through their approach to things like AI and how they're going to introduce that to their people?
The biggest question is, how can I get AI to work with me and for me? And they want to maintain control. And everybody's different. Every business is different. Even in the same vertical, the businesses are different. So you have to listen to what it means to that business and frame it to something that they will understand, find something that will work for them that's low risk and high yield, and then start there, get them familiar with it, and then build as they progress with it. Because AI is an enabler, and I tell people that if you don't start today, then the companies that do start today are going to be in front of you, and you're going to be looking from behind, which is never an advantageous position, right? So you have to start somewhere. Anywhere is good as long as you start.
I love that. You do have to start. I think that can sometimes, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? And yet that can be the thing that we procrastinate on, and we kick the can down the road and go, well, I will get to it. I'll get to it. And like you say, sometimes you've just got to grab the bull by the horns and just start and go. It doesn't matter where you start, as long as you start, because every step you take is a step closer to understanding, isn't it? And to
That's
into gaining that knowledge, into gaining that insight. So in your journey so far, what would you say has been the greatest lesson that you've learned?
the greatest lesson that I've learned is to look at both sides of an argument, and it's not just saying that, but it takes a lot of work to look at the other side and put your beliefs behind you and actually understand the other side. And once you can do that, you're so much better prepared to come at it to provide a solution. But it's really not as easy as it sounds because, our egos get involved and we think we're right all the time, right? Or often. And we usually think, oh, they're doing it the wrong way. But until you understand the motivations and the thought process, that may be right for them, but it's not right for you. So wrong is probably the wrong word to use. It's just what's right for them and what's right for you, and let's see if we can get what's right together.
I love that. I often say that there's actually three versions of the truth: your truth, my truth, and the actual truth. Because
Right.
our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So something happens and we make it mean something, but what I've made it mean might be very different to what you've made it mean. And so we're coming at it from a position of being truthful, but when you look at what's happening without the emotion, there might be a third version. But I love that whole being able to consider it from that space. And one of the things that I learned many years ago was about learning not to be so wedded to having to be right, and recognizing that just because I'm right doesn't make you wrong, and just because you're right doesn't make me wrong. We might be looking at it from a different perspective, or looking at it from a different requirement of the outcome. And once we seek to understand that, we now have all of the information to be able to make better choices and to find a way forward that works for everybody. And you're right, it does then open doors, doesn't it, for you to be able to do new things, to be able to kind of develop in areas that you wouldn't have done before as an organization, because we've got away from this having to be right all of the time.
And it's about perspective. So, if one person is preparing for a snowstorm and one person's not, they think that guy's crazy. He's doing all this stuff. Why is he doing that? And the other guy says he's crazy because he's not doing anything. But one guy knows about the storm, one guy doesn't. So once they both learn about it, then they more align in what they're trying to do. It's similar to that.
Yeah, that reminds me of uh, hearing a kind of story from a friend of mine, Mark Woods, who's a Paralympic swimmer, and he was talking about when they'd gone to the Olympics this first year. He said, and watch the faces of us, and they got silver. And as you saw them get out, saw the team get out, two of them were elated and two of them were devastated.
Yeah.
And he said it made us realize when we played it back that we hadn't got a common goal. So the reason half the team was devastated and half the team was elated was because for half of the team, getting a medal was what they were going for. For the
Right.
other half of the team, getting the gold was what they were going for.
Right.
So that might sound like really nuanced, but it made such a massive difference. He said once we realized actually our perspectives were different because our goal was different and therefore our outcome was different. And then he shared, that the video 4 years later when they went on and they got gold, and you saw how elated all four were. But actually what we realized was it was a great lesson for us in that we assumed we had common purpose.
Right.
But the reality was it was nuanced. There was, we weren't all driving to the same piece, and therefore we were going to have a very different emotional response to it. And we see that all the time, don't we, in life and particularly in business.
We do, and that's why, communicating and seeing both sides, you can quickly get to that common place versus going for a while at different places and not realizing it until you have an event, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important because in any business, as long as you're on the same page and you have a common goal, which is your point, then you're going to do better than the ones that don't have a common goal, the ones that are disparate.
Yeah. Well, because you've got that alignment, haven't you? You've got that
Right.
piece, and actually, we all know, we know where we're going, so therefore
Yeah.
we can now head in that direction. We can now be making our choices based on, does that get us closer to where we want to be or further away? Whereas if we've all got different goals,
Right.
then they could be pulling us each in different directions, and you lose the combined power, don't you, of that.
Right.
Of using all of the strengths that are available to you and all of the resource that's available to you.
Yeah, and I think when you have a common goal, everybody's energy is going in the right direction, and that combines to a more powerful force, as you know, as you can see, than two that are going in different directions. And
Yeah.
that all makes a difference because we have personal power, and when we use that, we can get much further than if we don't think about it or we don't use it.
It's so true. And I think often we aren't intentional with it.
Right.
I remember years ago, I was head of sales at the time, and it was my big eye opener into just how impactful personally you could be. Because if I walked around and for any reason didn't have the world's biggest smile on my face,
Mhm.
people would panic, and they'd be there
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Kim, are we off the number?" And I'm like, "No, I just I just fell out with my husband." It's like, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. So I realized that actually what I needed to do was constantly walk in and think, "Are you smiling? Do you look
That's right.
engaged? Do you look happy?" Because if not, you're making everybody else nervous.
Right.
Um, uh, but it but it was one of those eye-opening moments that was like, okay.
Yeah.
So let's have a look and see other people and go, well, actually, each of us has an ability to have a massive impact on other
That's
people
right.
and their day and their experience. And if we're doing it intentionally, then it's usually going to be significantly more positive than if we're unintentional, and therefore the response is going to be haphazard, isn't it?
Right, that's correct. Because intention is key in that. And we may want something that we want because it's new, it's big, it's shiny, whatever the reason. But if we want it for the good reasons, right? For the value reasons versus the shiny, nice reasons, you're more likely to get it because that's more reasonable and that's more in line with who we are than to be flashy and big and, look at me type of thing. So those things make a difference when you're going for something, and I've found this over the years, and that's why I've gotten better at creating the future for myself, and that's actually how the book that I've got formulated because I never thought I would write a book. I just never in a million years, and all of a sudden it just happened, and I said, "My God, I think I have something here.
Yeah,
What do I do with it?"
I love that, and that's due to be out, isn't it? And is it later on this year, December?
It's yeah, late this year, early next year. It's the first book I've written, so I'm running into all the first book challenges.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I remember, uh, I was very lucky in the fact that my first book, a lot of those challenges went by in a whirlwind because I co-authored, and I co-authored in the literally on day one of lockdown.
Oh,
I got
oh my
a
gosh.
phone call when the world was in chaos. I got a phone call and they were like, "Kim, we're going to write a book on remote working, and you've been leading remote teams for years. Would you write a chapter?" And I was like, "No, I can't even write. I certainly can't write a chapter. Don't be so ridiculous." And they're like, "Go on, what else are you going to do? You're locked in with a 2-year-old." And I was like, "Fair point."
Yeah.
Um, so I did. But the reason I say all of the challenges got taken away was they literally gave us 5 days to write our chapter.
Oh,
Um, and then they published on, so day one of lockdown, we were told we could to be a part of it. We had until at the end of that week, so 5 days,
oh my
to
gosh.
write it. Then it went obviously to be edited, etc. And it went live. It was published live on day 10 of lockdown.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and on day 12, I was live, in my pajamas in the garden on BBC Radio London talking about becoming an international best-selling author in 6 countries in lockdown. I was like, I don't really know how it happened. In a blur. But having now gone on to write other books, I get the kind of the challenges. that I had a very unique experience for that one. It
Yes.
hasn't been replicated. The others, that they're it's not just the idea and the concept, is it? It's then pulling that into a cohesive story
Right.
that and that it flows and makes sense, because we know what we know so well that sometimes we might put it in an order that when we're sharing it with
Sure.
somebody else, they're like, why isn't that the other way around?
Yeah. What are you trying to say?
How do we pull those? But it's I mean, it's such a great experience to go through, isn't it? In kind of writing that down, realizing how much you've learned about
Yeah,
something, and having that opportunity to be able to share that to help other people learn it without having to have the
that's
30
right.
years worth experience that you
Right.
had to learn it in the first instance. Is that one of the reasons that drove you to write the book?
Yeah, I saw a video, a press conference with Neuralink, and they showed how the person who got the first chip could think how to move the mouse on the computer and it would move. And he became really good at chess and gaming and so forth. And I said, well, that's telekinesis. I mean, I can put a piece of paper on my desk on a pin and make it spin around, right? But I can't control the mouse on the computer. So I said, that's pretty amazing. And then one thing led to another. And I wrote an emotional story for a course I was in, and I got a lot of hits on it. And I said, why does everybody like this? And when we had a Zoom call, everybody told me why they liked it. And then another bell went off. And I decided to write a book because brain computer interface, that's something that can be can go in the wrong direction in the future if we don't put guardrails on it.
Yeah.
And it crosses the bridge of telekinesis, because if he can think this, even though it's from a chip, and sometimes the mouse moves before he even has the thought, and it moves in the right direction. I said, if they can do that, then what else can it do? Because we're pretty much a divided, you know, society. And if AI can help people flip the switch from going from individual thinking to group thinking, instead of what's best for me to what's best for all. And if everybody did that, the next day the world would be such a better place.
Yeah.
And it's a point where we have a choice, and I've lived through that. We have a choice of how we want to go it every day. Do you want to go at it in an inclusive property, or do you want to go in it as what's best for me, to a point we had earlier? And I think if everybody looked at it from a overall perspective, then everything would just in short order get much better. And it's possible with AI to help people, or we can do it ourselves.
I love that, because well, I guess it's that it's augmenting the intelligence, isn't it? It's
Right.
allowing us to kind of take what we know and pull all of those bits together, but have an unemotive perspective that allows us to observe what's right for everybody, and actually how do we move forward for that. And anything that drives positive change has to be a good thing, doesn't it? That allows us
Right.
to put things in a better position than they are today.
Yes. And I think that's the point. It gets people to think differently about it. It puts AI and BCI in perspective, and people look at it and say, I'm really in charge of this. And this is an enabler if I choose to use it. And then people, when they know they're in charge, then they can do it themselves, or they too can get a chip and they can do it that way. But it's a choice.
Yeah. I love that, because I think everything in life is a choice.
Yeah.
And once we realise that, we can't control the circumstances, but we can control how we choose to respond to them. And therefore, our choice is the thing that we get to own and we get to control, and we get to. If we make a bad choice, it's a choice. We can make a brand new one straight afterwards.
Right.
I have to think that old adage that I grew up with, which is, you've made your bed, you've got to lie in it. It's like, it's your
Yeah.
bed, it again. It's like, it's your bed, you don't lying in it. Get out, do
I
something. If we look at that with choices, it makes things so much easier. I could literally chat to you all day, but I'm conscious of time. So, Bruce, if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be to go inside at an earlier age, meditate, get to know who you truly are, and that would align and produce a better first 10 years than I had and get me further along in the decades that follow. Because if you believe in yourself and you have the information to know that you can believe in yourself, then you're going to get further in this world than if you don't. Because if you don't believe in yourself, there's few other people that are going to.
It's very, very true. And yet, so often for so many of us, um, believing in ourselves doesn't come naturally, doesn't come easy,
Right.
until you go and do that inner work. So thank you so much. But before you go, can you tell us, how can people get in touch with you and who do you help?
Sure. They can get in touch with me at my website. It's www.theaiparadox.com. I have a free consultation on the page. I'm updating it right now, but it's got other podcasts and my story on there. They can understand who I am, and if I can help in any way, please reach out to me.
Amazing. And we'll make sure, obviously, all the ways to connect with you, Bruce, and learn more about what you do and how you can help are in the show notes below. But I'd just like to say thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your journey with us and sharing such great insight and advice. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. It's been my pleasure.
And to everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it equally insightful and inspiring. And until next time, take care.